What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Optimal, presented by FTN Network. It's been a minute since I've done the intro. Mr. Kwan is on the back end doing some stuff with the graphics, which shout out to Kwan. Before we get started with anything, we have a great show today for you guys. We're going to be talking about the Super Bowl. This is our Super Bowl preview show. The Optimal Big Game Preview is what we're kind of calling it here. So a lot of hard work went on for Mr. Kwan behind the scenes, doing a lot of these graphics that you will see on the show. Shout out to Kwan. Shout out to our guy, George. They killed it. We're really looking forward to the show. I mean, obviously, pumped to talk the Super Bowl, but even more so, pumped to put on this show for you guys and have a lot of nice graphics, a lot of awesome picks. We have, in my opinion, some. I talked about this on the Friday show. Some of the specialty picks. I didn't quite go full Josh Gross mode betting on the Gatorade color, but I do have a few. I think 5 or 6 specialty picks that I really like. All weekend I was kind of sifting through the books and looking for some of my favorites. So hopefully we can have some winners there. We're going to break down all the players that we think we need to talk about. I'm going to call them a little bit player profile. That's going to be the segment. We're going to be talking about the quarterbacks, the top 2 running backs, and the top 4 wide receivers. Going to be giving some prize pick plays, some bets. Going to be comparing their projections to the sports books and prize picks odds, and also taking a look at the DK pricing and DK projections. So looking forward to it. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Not to mention, we're going to have a little halftime show here. I don't know if you guys remember, hopefully you recall, but a few weeks back, we had a scenario where our guy Quan, who's a big Rams fan, which if you guys have been watching probably one episode of The Optimal by now, you know that. I feel like we've been talking about it so much because obviously the Rams are making this run. But we also have another FTN colleague, ex-freshie, a.k.a. Sean Evans, who is a big 49ers fan. And they decided to put on a little bet, a little friendly wager, and whoever lost that wager had to do a nice dance. So we have a dance from Freshie, and he took it a step above, and he crushed it. I'm pumped for you guys to see this. It's awesome stuff. Kwan, how are you feeling about today's show? I know you've put in a lot of work, so shout out to you, my man. Appreciate it. And I know you're excited. Obviously, you talk some more Rams, right?
It's getting hot again. I'm really excited about that.
Well, there's a little teaser as to the song that Mr. Expression is going to have, but yeah, he definitely made it a very funny clip, and it's going to be on our FTN TikTok, which I mean, not to say that we have any viral videos yet. We'll get one eventually, but we've had some funny.
This is the one potentially.
Yeah, we've had some funny videos, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like Tyler's been doing some funny videos. We got the Joe Metz dancing, and he hits like a plus 9,000 parlay or whatever it is on the first day he does a TikTok. So I mean, hey, and then I got a Slack message last week asking if I'm going to get on the TikTok train because apparently they want me to do some TikTok. So I don't know. I might be cracking into that scene too. I guess we'll see how much I can embarrass myself. Won't be able to do it quite like Sean, but we'll see how it goes.
I think we can get a floss out of you.
Oh yeah, I can get down with the floss for sure.
There we go. See, easy money right there.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk about the big game. So Quan, anything that you want to bring up or talk about before we get right into the player profiles?
Man, I think this has been like I haven't really dove into anything that's been going on with the game yet. It's been like a week of preparation for this show, for me at least, and the lines haven't really moved. I'm excited to see what the game scripts are going to be for both sides, because I think just because they haven't played each other, there's going to be a fill out process. Everything's going to kind of go slow. But I'm excited to at least see Stafford play. I want to see how Joe Burrow is going to come out. I think he's been the talk of the town for the entire playoffs, and I want to see him on a big stage. He's been on a big stage before as far as the national championship goes, but this is the epitome of this is the upper echelon. You're in the Super Bowl second year. And I saw some Tom Brady comparisons earlier. Tom Brady got to the Super Bowl, and I think it was his second year, but they were saying, what's going to happen with Joe Burrow and this team. And, we all talked about how, like I said, you keep seeing the graphic about Penei Sewell, if they should have took Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase answered it today. Well, we're in the Super Bowl, so I guess they made the right decision. But yeah, I'm excited to see what plays or how it plays out at least.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. And you mentioned, the preparation for this show. It feels weird because typically with the way that DFS works, it's like you do something and the next day it doesn't really matter as much because
Yeah,
it's just such a daily thing, especially for the daily sports like NBA, which obviously we're in the swing of right now. For football, I guess it's a little different because you have the week of content or whatever. But for this show, it's cool because like we've been planning it for like 2 weeks, and then you've been working on the graphics and stuff for like a week. So I mean, yeah, it's been exciting. So I'm excited to get into it. So let's get into it. We're gonna start with let's talk about the game first. Obviously, where the game total is at currently, it's at 49, I believe, is where I saw it last. So yeah, over under currently at 49. It's been moving back and forth in between 48 and 49 since it really opened. 4.5 or 4 is where the line has also been. Hasn't gone to 5 or any lower than 4 yet. But LA currently favored 4.5 point favorites. Cincinnati plus 170 on the money line. And like I mentioned, total is at 49 on DraftKings right now. So again, shout out to Quan. This graphic is absolutely awesome. So in terms of any bets that I like here, I don't really have a super strong inclination towards the total or the spread. If you guys know me and if you've been following my bets in the bet tracker, I like to stick to props a lot because that's where I feel like I can have the most confidence in those bets. But I don't know, the over under seems a bit high, but I don't know if it's a number where I love betting the under. So for me, I probably mostly stay away from it. But I think a couple things that you can pull away from the total is Vegas seems to be decently high on the game script. I mean, 49, it's not necessarily a super high total, but it's definitely not a low one either. I mean, we've seen totals in the low 40s consistently throughout the year and even consistently throughout the playoffs. So I think 48.5 is a pretty low number. I mean, even just last week, we saw the Rams have like a 42.5 game total against the 49ers. So it does appear Vegas is a bit higher on this game, potentially having some more points scored and potentially being a little bit more of a shootout. Me and Kwan have been talking about this for like the last week, where it does feel like both of these teams have ran into the problem where they've been able to, drive the ball down the field, but not necessarily finish out a ton of drives consistently. We saw it last week with the Rams where they put up all the yards that they really could ask for against the 49ers, only walked away with 20 points. And then 2 weeks ago for the Bengals, when they had Joe Burrow had over 350 passing yards and they only scored 16 points and they only scored one touchdown against the Titans. So that's been kind of an apparent theme there for both teams, really, at least in a couple of games throughout the playoffs and even towards the end of the regular season. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I would lean the under, but it wouldn't be something I would bet just because A, I don't like to bet unders, and B, I don't think it's enough of a lean to really feel like that is the bet for me. In terms of what I like on the money line, I do like Cincinnati plus 4.5. I just think that this game is bound to be close. Um, I do think the Rams win this one, but plus 4.5 is a pretty good number here for the Bengals, who have played every single team that they've played this season close, or sorry, in the postseason. But even the Rams, like they haven't necessarily ran away with a ton of games either.
yeah,
So even in that game against the Buccaneers, they did run away with it, but they allowed the Bucs to catch up
come
and
back.
obviously played
Yeah.
that game close. So both the teams have been in a ton of close games, and obviously that's been kind of the theme for every single playoff game where we've had at least 5 or 6 games end in walk-offs, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that again here in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take Bengals plus 4.5, and I guess I would say my lean would be the under on the 48.5 or 49, but not going to be something that I bet just yet. Any thoughts for you?
No, I think that's you summarized it perfectly. I think the problem has been with the Rams finishing the game and Sean McVay going ultra conservative in the second half. If I'm him, I have to put the ball in Stafford's hands in the second half and not let the Bengals do what they've done consistently in the playoffs. Like their second half team, we saw that when they played the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. They were down 21-3, same margin as the first time that they played the Chiefs. So, looking at that, I think they're going to come out, the Rams, and they're going to feed Michelle the ball. I think him and Akers are going to split a lot of carries because of what Akers did in the Buccaneers game. I'm operating under the notion that it's going to be the Rams playing with a short field a lot of the time. I'm really concerned about Joe Burrow He's probably going to be running for his life and, scrambling out of the pocket to make plays because, I think the Rams defense has been playing to a level that they should have been playing to all season. Aaron Donald stepping up. I think, was it you that made a play on Aaron Donald? Yeah, you made a play on Aaron Donald. And I think that's a great call. Like, I think, you don't often see defensive players win Super Bowl MVP, but, that's going to be something in the back of everybody's mind is how well this team plays with Aaron Donald getting pressure up front. You got Von Miller, who also has been a Super Bowl MVP, and then Leonard Floyd coming off the edge. So I think that's going to make a lot of the Bengals' decisions. They're going to have to get the ball out quick, extension of the run game, dumping it off to Joe Mixon. I was watching the last time these two teams played. You can pick up a lot of – I know it was a couple of years ago, but you can pick up a lot of tendencies and stuff, watching coaches and how they went about attacking the game. And Cooper Kupp, I think that was one of his – early on, that was one of his big games. He had, I think, over 200 yards playing. The Bengals tried to get Joe Mixon involved early, but Andy Dalton was the quarterback at the time, so it's going to be a completely different game based off of what it was 2 years ago. But I think a heavy dose of Joe Mixon, we saw that Zach Taylor is comfortable sticking with the run and continuing to go with it when everybody's yelling at him, stop running on first down. I saw it all across the board when they were playing the Chiefs, but he's going to stick with it. I think Jamar Chase has the opportunity to have a big game. The Rams are a cover 2 team, and the middle of the field, I don't know if DJ Reader is going to get his head out of his ass, but the middle of the field is often open. So look for them to kind of, screen game and then throw some double post, some slant posts behind them, and, find ways to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins open.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this in the show on Friday where we were talking about it a little bit, and you said that they could essentially think of using Jamar Chase as an extension of the run, and I think that's a good call. Obviously, he's very explosive, so that's always going to be trouble for the Rams. And even though it does appear to be, a tough matchup, obviously Rams are a great defense. The Bengals have a very explosive offense. They can they could definitely find their way in this game and make some big plays. But all right, let's head over to the player profiles. We're going to talk the quarterbacks first. First on the board is Matt Stafford. Based on what we're seeing from Matt Stafford here, he is, I think he's the second most expensive player, second most expensive player, on DraftKings, 10.8K for the showdown salary. That is not the MVP salary or the captain salary. That is just his utility salary. Right now, my projections have him for 21.65 fantasy points on the night. In terms of his props, currently at 279.5 over on DraftKings and 272 over on Prize Picks for his passing yards. I have him projected to go well over that. 292.9 is where I have him at. 25.2 completions, 37 attempts, just over 2 touchdowns and 3.8 rushing yards. And I put in the rushing yards there. I know it's not a big one, but his rushing prop was either at half a yard or 1.5 yards. Pretty much every sports book. So I threw that in there just because we talked about this on Friday where he's actually got it done with the legs in the last 3 games. He's gone over that number. And obviously the last 2 games, he's had rushes of 10 plus yards. Not that that's anything that I want to count on for Mr. Matthew Stafford, but I do think that maybe that is a line that people wanted to take a look at. So anything sticking out to you for Matthew Stafford?
That's a great point because you're getting 1 yard quarterback sneaks when they need a first down. If it's 3rd and 1, sometimes they push him forward and a lot or on the goal line. It could be an opportunity for them to don't want to hand the ball off to Michelle, and we saw what happens when Cam Akers has the ball on the goal line. So I think that's a very great point as far as throwing that rushing yard prop in there. That might be something that I look into also. If it's only 1 yard, I would take that over, the 12.5 or the 10.5, anything that, where you're looking for him to scramble a lot. But I think there's going to be an opportunity depending on how much man the Bengals play, which I think just the way that the Rams spread people out, they go 4x1s, they go 3x1s. You have to compensate when you do stuff like that. So you either run a cover 2 behind it, or you man up, which was probably not ideal, but there'll be an opportunity. I think the Rams protect really well too. So as far as the other props go, I don't know if he's getting I hope he gets to like 38 attempts, but that seems like a different game than what I'm planning in my head. And once again, with the conservativeness of McVay, I think it's probably if they get a lead early, I think he's going to do a lot more running. But I'm hoping that he decides to put the ball in Stafford's hands. You don't get those 3-and-outs where he's handing them a shell because we're trying to eat the clock up. So the passing yards prop, I keep saying in my head, it's going to be like a short field, but you got to prepare for long drives too. Maybe the Bengals get something going at the end of the half. Second half, the Bengals start that comeback. There are a lot of opportunities there, but I would lean towards the under on the 292. It's not that I'm saying that he can't do it. I'm saying that Higbee's out. You're going to be relying on Kendall Blanton, and I think Van Jefferson hasn't been absent, but he hasn't been as much as of a threat as he has been. And we're looking at a Cooper Kupp. I think he was at. We're going to look at him pretty soon, but like 102, and then Odell's at about 60 or something for his player prop. So, I'm trying to find other areas where those receiving yard props would come in. It'd be from Blanton, maybe Akers and Michelle out the backfield, but 292 seems kind of high to me. So I would lean towards the under. So that means fade Quan and go with the over.
Well, so you like the 292. That's where I haven't projected. 272 is this line on Prize Picks.
That's right.
And 279 on DraftKings, I believe it's 279. So, I mean, going off of your point, when we see them in those games where, against Arizona in the first week of the playoffs, it was kind of obviously a game where they just housed the Cardinals. It was never even really an issue. So if that were to be the case, obviously I think the under is definitely the play here. But the last two games, he's had 38 attempts or more in both. 337 last game, 366, in that game against Tampa. So I mean, it sounds like we're on the same page where it's going to depend on the game script.
Yeah,
I think we might be on a bit different game scripts because it sounds like I think that there might be a little bit more opportunity for him to sling it around a little bit. And I mean, the most interesting part for me was how we saw the the Bengals adjust to the Chiefs in the second half. So even if the Bengals get off to a slow start, I wouldn't be surprised to see them to claw it back and bring it back here and force the Rams into a bit more of a foot on the gas type offense. So I like the over on Stafford's line right now. I have him at 292. But also, I just feel like 272 on Prize Picks, that's just a pretty low number.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow's number is also very low as well. So let's hop over and talk about Joe Burrow here. He is the third most expensive player on DraftKings in the showdown slate in the utility slot at 10-6. Also, look at the top left corner. Shout out to Quan for that awesome detail on the Joe Burrow with the shades graphic there. Love to see that. I feel like Joe's gotten he's showing off some swag in the postseason here. He's got the glasses. He's got the him saying he makes too much money for fake chains, all that stuff. I mean, this guy is he's something, man. He's been a pleasure to watch there. So I'm looking forward to seeing Joe Burrow on a big stage here in the NFL. You alluded to what we've seen him do in the postseason as a college player. I'm excited to see him play here in the Super Bowl. But in terms of projected stats, 36.8 attempts, 25 completions. His and Stafford's completions and attempt numbers are very similar. They have the same passing touchdown projection, and nearly the same passing yards. Joe Burrow has him edged out by about 7 at 299.5. Rushing prop at 8.3 yards. His rushing prop is a bit higher across the books. There's not as much of an edge there, but again, it's still like a one play payday type deal in terms of his props. Over on DraftKings, he's at 275.5, and on Prize Picks 265.5. Very low over there. I like that bet a ton. And again, we'll circle back to some of the Prize Picks plays at the end of the show. But fantasy point projection 21.26. Again, stay tuned for any updates that we have on these projections and all that good stuff. It obviously is quite early. And then eventually we're going to have some ownership projections from Mr. Alex Blickel himself on the showdown slate. So again, these will all be in the optimizer leading up to the slate. So check in on those projections as we go. But like I mentioned, Joe Burrow, third most expensive player on the DraftKings showdown slate. And I think he makes a ton of sense, especially if you're looking to stack the Bengals. And then our guy, Freshie Sean Evans, is saying on Underdog, where he's been grinding out underdog plays pretty much all year, especially all NBA season, Joe Burrow has their special of 1 passing yard for Joe Burrow, which I'm quite sure he'll go over that. And I believe Underdog, they also put the cool little the shades pick as his graphic on Underdog too. So I can always appreciate that. But so I do like Joe Burrow a lot in this game. I think that if they're going to do anything, they're going to need him. And And we talked about some of the problems that the Bengals have had from an offensive line perspective. But I mean, it's tough to even think that from a statistical a statistical standpoint, based on can Joe Burrow put up the stats, it's hard to say that like matters a ton because he's been so good without an offensive line for 2 years now. And even in the playoffs now, we've seen him absolutely just get beat up, have no time, and he's still getting it done. Even last week when he struggled mightily in the first half, he threw for 250 yards. Obviously, that's not going to get it done in this game, but 2 touchdowns. And then obviously in that game against the Titans where he got sacked 9 times, I believe, which was, I think, a postseason high, still threw for 348 yards. So even despite the struggles that the Bengals offensive line has had, still love Joe Burrow a ton here. I think he's going to be able to put up some numbers because I think they're going to need him to. And one thing that I've noticed is that I think the Bengals are a bit unique in the sense that they can get the ball out quick, and it still feels like they're throwing the ball down the field. Like it's like, I don't know. It might be the speed for Chase or just like the trust that they have to just like throw the ball 20 yards down the field. It seems as soon as Joe Burrow drops back, but it's very strange. I don't know. Like I don't have any stats behind this, but it seems like Burrow can drop back and throw the ball, get it out super quick, and it's still a 30 air yard pass down the field to Jamar Chase because of how quick he is and getting off the line and the trust to let him go up there and get it. So I think there's definitely a few ways that the Bengals can get it done. You alluded to that as well. Despite I do think that they're going to have some trouble, obviously, protecting Burrow. If they did against the Titans, they're definitely going to have trouble against the Rams. So I think that is going to be an issue, but it's one I think that they can work around as they've done all year. So I like Burrow a ton.
I think you made a really good point there. There was this adjustment they made in the Chiefs game where they had Chase, I guess, stacked outside, and they would motion across to see, if it's man or if it's cover 2. And then they ran, I think it was a curl flat behind them, and they just ran a 3-step and threw it to Chase and let him get yards after the catch. So you're probably going to see a lot of that. And the Rams, once again, cover 2 teams. So you'll probably see a lot of 3-step fades and them trying to attack the outside and the sideline. So, you kind of flipped me a little bit on my game script now because you're telling me that I keep forgetting about the Titans game, like how bad it was for him to have time, but he's still completing a lot of these passes, and with the way that the Rams play defense, they give up big plays all the time. So I think they're a bend but don't break defense. I think the front four they're gonna eat. They're gonna have a great game, but Burrow is magical. Like you can't say that this run isn't magical. And also what you said, the last 2 years, he's done this with no offensive line for 2 years. So I think he's accustomed to it. He's still young. He's got legs, and you saw that he's willing to run and go for the first downs with his legs. So there'll be an opportunity there. I think he'll escape a lot of pressure, but I think I'm gonna kind of recalibrate based off of what you put together. I think he'll have a decent game, and the only way for the Bengals to win is for him to hit that rushing prop or that passing prop over. So I think 265.5 or 275.5, I think will both be good numbers. And they're going to need him to be Joe Icy, Joe Burr, everything, all the nicknames that they're giving him now, he's going to have to do all that.
Yeah, and he's gotten some pretty cool nicknames, I'm not going to lie. But one thing that
I don't like the Joe Cool thing that they're doing. That's reserved for one person.
It does get to a point where obviously the common names and then the common nicknames, but it also gets to a point where they just give him too many nicknames, and then we don't know which ones. Like for Terry McLaurin when he first came out of the scene, I feel like he had like 5 nicknames. It's like, guys, we need to make one so we can figure out which one we're gonna go by. But Sean says he was the most sacked quarterback in the regular season, I believe, still made it to the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, that was even the case last year when he was obviously playing without Jamar Chase in the first 8 or 9 weeks before the really bad knee injury, obviously. But, and again, like it is tough to say, like he's been able to work through, the offensive line problems when the offensive line problems probably led to that injury. I'm sure that didn't help. But like he was still putting up very good numbers prior to that, and obviously during the regular season this year and now in the postseason. So, yeah, still making it to the Super Bowl. They clearly have their way of getting around those issues. Like it kind of feels like in the NFL, every team's going to have their issues, right? And the good teams are going to be able to kind of hide those weaknesses, right? And it feels like the Bengals have been able to do that. And it is tough because the offensive line is obviously going to be a glaring issue when it's bad. But again, like if they're able to work around it, which they've been able to, I think that they can still, find the ways to move the ball and be an explosive offense. But we've talked about the quarterbacks a little bit. Let's hop over to the running backs. We'll touch on Joe Mixon first. He's 9.6K over on DraftKings in the showdown slate. That's the 5th most expensive player on the board. I have him at a 17.96 fantasy point projection, very high projection for Mixon, and I was quite surprised to see his projection be as high as it was to go along with some of these Bengals projections. But again, like, I'm pretty high in the Bengals offense as a whole. And, when you look at some of his projected stats here, pulling up that graphic again, sorry, Quan, 17.8 carries. I still think they're going to have to try to establish the run game, although I think that it could be very easy to get away from it. I think that if there's a way that in a world in which they win, that he's going to be involved. But even when you date back to the Tennessee game, he had 14 carries in that game. And obviously in the game against Kansas City, where they started off just very slow, he still had 21 attempts. So 17.8 carries might seem like a very high number, but I do think that they're going to try to establish the run here with Mixon. Again, I think it can be very easy for them to turn away from it, but I think they're going to try it at least. And even if Mixon isn't involved in the run game, we've seen him heavily involved in the passing game. So when you look at the DraftKings fantasy point projection, this is a guy with a very good role in the passing game, even in games where it seems to be where he's just not getting anything going on the ground. He's getting the targets. He's getting the receptions. The last game was his first game in his last 4 where he didn't have 5+ targets. So he's continued to be involved in the passing game. Last week, he had 3 catches on 3 targets. The week before that against the Titans, 7 targets for 6 catches. So again, like I mentioned, outside of last week, he had 5+ targets in each of the last 4. So it kind of feels like he's going to be involved either way. And if CJ Uzoma isn't able to go, he might be used as a more of a receiving option in the underlying passing game there. So again, we're going to have to follow up on that Uzoma news, but Uzoma was pretty heavily involved in the playoffs as well. He up until the game where he got injured last game, he had racked up 6+ targets in 5 of his last 6 games. So those targets are going to be vacated. I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Mixon pick up a lot of those options there in the underneath game. So what are your thoughts on Mixon for this game?
No, I think you keep hammering home. I think I keep hammering home. Zach Taylor, he's determined to keep that running game going. So, I think Mixon is going to be someone who the Rams can be run on. It's just going to be finding the way to stretch the defense out. I think they create, like with Von Miller rushing, he creates a lot of big lanes. I think he's more so inclined to be a pass rusher than a run stopper. So I think there's an opportunity there. I think they rely on Donald to kind of bounce a lot of things out and make those plays for the front 4. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Mixon has a big game, or at least a game where the running game is keeping them moving down the field. Yeah. They're picking up first downs, and they're doing the things necessary to put the offense in place. So I would props 60.5, 62.5. You got to project it at about 70. So I think that's a good play. I would count on Mixon to have at least the most rushing yards out of everybody, because I see Cam Akers and Michelle kind of splitting carries just based off of how Akers is returning from injury, and he hasn't had a bad playoffs, but I think those 2 fumbles were really costly. And you always have that in the back of your mind as a coach. Can this guy protect the ball? And Super Bowl is a game where you need to protect the ball, no turnovers. So out of all the running backs available, I think Mixon's going to be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some of his prop lines. So let's take a look at those real quick. Taking a look on DraftKings, 62.5 is his rushing prop. And I'm probably going to stay away from the rushing prop just because I'm so high on the passing offense. But I do like his receiving props here. I have him for 25 receiving yards. And typically I'm a guy that I like to look at the projections, compare them to the lines, and there I have some picks. But I'm actually gonna, go. Obviously, it's not like I haven't projected for the under on these picks, except for I guess on DraftKings 25.5, I haven't projected for 25 receiving yards. But I actually like the over. Like if I had to take a lean on Joe Mixon, it would be the over on either his receptions or his receiving yards. So yeah. I like both picks there. Joe Mixon, his receiving yards prop is at 24.5 on Prize Picks, 25.5 on DraftKings. His receptions prop actually higher on Prize Picks than it is on the sports books, which you're typically not going to see. Typically, Prize Picks lines are lower than the sports books, from what I've noticed. There are some scenarios where it's vice versa, but from what I've noticed, it does appear that Prize Picks lines are typically under. So maybe the under on Joe Mixon on Prize Picks is a play that you wanted to make, surely, based off of that. But the over on his receiving yards is kind of my initial lean, and I guess even potentially the under, depending on how. In my opinion, if you're playing Prize Picks for the Super Bowl, you're going to want to think of correlations, and if you're running up there and taking the over on Joe Burrow, taking the over on some of his wide receivers, maybe taking the under on the Mixon receiving receptions prop makes some sense, but the receiving yards over is currently what I'm looking at for Mixon. But let's hop on over to the second running back in this game that we're going to talk about, Cam Akers. He's priced pretty fairly and honestly pretty attractively on DraftKings. I think he's going to be one of the more popular showdown plays for this game here. I know he's back on the injury report with a shoulder injury, but I think he's going to be fine. He didn't practice much this week, but again, you essentially have 2 weeks to prepare, so I don't think it's a big issue here for Akers, who's taken on a ton of work here. 13 carries last game, 24 against Tampa Bay, and 17 against Arizona. I am projected for 16, 58.7 rushing yards, 3 targets, 3 catches. I think that's actually a mistake on my end, or a typo there on the targets, but yeah, I typed that wrong in the chat, but it's actually 4.2 targets and 3.3 receptions. Apologies for that. 17.9 receiving yards is the current projection. But in terms of Cam Akers props, I hate to be that guy, but I'm basically staying away from him. I don't have a great feel on it. You mentioned some of the potential worries with Sony Michel as a guy who could potentially get in there a bit more. He did last week. I don't think it's any kind of surprise that the game where Cam Akers almost fumbled the game away. Sony Michel goes from having 1 carry in that game to 10 in the next. I don't think it's any kind of coincidence. So for me, it's hard to project Cam Akers to not be involved, because even when Sony Michel did have a bigger role, he still had 13 carries there. But I'm staying away from Cam Akers. I don't mind him on the DraftKings showdown slate, because he does feel priced pretty fairly, or pretty honestly, like I mentioned, attractively at 6'4". I think that's probably a bit too cheap there, but yeah, he's a guy that I do like quite a bit here.
Yeah, I think it's too much of an issue. You're saying that he's on the injury report with the shoulder issue now, so you have to think he'd probably be a good change of pace. But Sony Michel has been running the ball well, and he's done what he's needed to do. He fights for tough yards, and down on the goal line, he's getting them in position to score. I think it was the Cardinals game. It might have been where he should have had the first touchdown. I remember betting it. It might not have been a Cardinals game, whatever it was, but he should have had a first touchdown play. And I once again, I think they're going to keep the ball in Stafford's hands. He's kind of proven that he's going to make smart decisions. I think it's 8 touchdowns, 1 interception in the playoffs. Sony Michel is going to be a guy that, short yardage, you can get something, but also Cooper Kupp underneath, Odell Beckham winning one-on-ones. Like, those are the ideas that come to mind when I'm thinking of how this game plays out. But I don't think we're going to see too much Cam Akers. And that's not a bad thing. I just don't think he's reliable at this point, or it's something that you want a chance.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they will mix in Michelle. I do think that Cam Akers is still going to get his fair share. But I have him at 14, just over 14 DraftKings points. So the main reason why I'm looking into Cam Akers, or the main spot I'm looking in to Cam Akers, is the showdown slate, as probably not a captain play, but a utility option, save some salary. And when you consider his DraftKings projection at 14 points compared to some other guys in that price range, or in that even projection range, you'll notice that he's a bit cheaper. But let's talk about some wide receivers here. First on the board, how could we not talk about Cooper Kupp as the first wide receiver here? He is the most expensive player on the DraftKings slate here. No surprise. He's been not only the best fantasy producer this season, but arguably in pretty recent memory, honestly. He's been very good. He's been electric. It feels like a 20-point game from Cooper Kupp is a down game. So yeah, been very good from a fantasy perspective. Last week, 11 catches on 14 targets for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. It seems like he scores a touchdown every single game. He's got 20 on the year now. And Cooper Kupp is going to be obviously someone that a lot of people are going to be betting on here. So let's talk about his projections here. 12.8 targets, 9 catches, just under 9 catches, 116.9 receiving yards. His props on DraftKings are 8.5 receptions and 104.5 receiving yards. On PrizePicks, 8 catches, 102.5 receiving yards. His fantasy point projection right now is 27.3, and like I mentioned, he's the most expensive player on the showdown slate at 11.6. In terms of Cooper Kupp here, it's obviously, in my opinion, it's kind of just foolish to bet the under on him. Sure, it can happen. He can hit the unders, but just why would you want to do that?
Why would you risk it? Yeah.
And it's just like, just even the pain of just watching this guy rack up catches after catch after catch, and then even when he is racking, this guy's always open. Like, he's literally never having a problem getting open. So it's just not a bet. The unders are not where I'm going for Cooper Kupp here. They are big overs, so if anything, I would say to take the over or just to stay away. But just if you take the under, you'll be sitting there with all your friends watching the Super Bowl, knowing that you took the under. You definitely won't tell any of your friends that you took the under on Cooper Kupp because you'll be too embarrassed to share that, and your friends will laugh at you and question you and probably question their friendship with you. You might even get kicked out of the Super Bowl party. So you're not betting any unders on Cooper Kupp. You're just not doing it. It's just, if you're doing this for fun, if you're doing it for a living, either way, you're just not betting the under on Cooper Kupp. So
Don't do it.
That's just not something that we want to do here. In terms of his overs, obviously big numbers here, 102.5 over on DraftKings. 102 on PrizePicks, 104 on DraftKings. So my inclination would be the over. The one thing I don't like is the over on his receptions. I know I have him for just under 9, but on PrizePicks, you would need 9 for him to not push that bet, and you would need obviously 9 for him to cash that bet on DraftKings, and that's still a big number. His receiving yards, I can see him hitting that pretty easily, even on less catches. I mean, this is a guy who's repeatedly racked up double-digit catches. He's done it now 5 times, 6 times so far this season. So it's a big receptions line, but the under is not something that I'm touching, and the yards is kind of where I'm targeting for Cooper Kupp's over. And again, if you're playing this stuff on PrizePicks, think about correlation, because again, or even in DraftKings in the same game parlays, think about correlation, because it's just like the domino theory that we talk about all the time, right? For DFS, where you're building these lineups with 8-9 guys, and it's tough to get all 9 spots right, but it gets a lot easier when you notice that if spot A helps spot B get there, and maybe even spot C, and these dominoes are falling, and if one play is going to get there, and if that play does get there, that would mean that a couple of the secondary plays would also have better probability of also getting there. Thinking about correlation when you're doing these parlays is definitely something that you are going to want to do on PrizePicks, on the sportsbooks for the same game parlays. Something you definitely want to do. And Hobby says, friends don't let friends bet Kupp unders. Very true. Words
That's
to live
great,
by.
That's great, huh?
Words to live by there. So, that's the deal on Cooper Kupp. I'm assuming you have similar feelings. What are your thoughts on Mr. Kupp this game?
Listen, man, the last time Cooper Kupp played the Bengals, career high, I think it was 220. The way that they scheme him open is going to be, it's like you said, he's always open, and it's going to look like that. They're going to run a bunch of levels things where you got to choose between Cooper Kupp on the corner or Cooper Kupp on the post and somebody going deep. And naturally, you got to protect the deep ball. I think the middle of the field is going to be open, and Stafford, he's been throwing some good balls over the middle field. He hasn't been sailing them high, which, if he's having one of those games where he's on early, he's probably not going to miss those over the middle of the field. Yeah. I think, like Hobby said, man, friends don't let friends bet the Cooper Kupp under. I think that's going to be a play that I put in today. It's something, his receiving prop, whatever it is, I think he has a chance to crush it. I look for him. If you're looking for something where, you want to, I think it's a slate breaker is what we call him. Yep. I think Kupp is going to be the guy. Even if Stafford has a bad game, he's going to find him. He relies heavily on Cooper Kupp bailing him out of jams, and on second and long, starting longs, that's the guy that they scheme open. So if you throw money at Cooper Kupp, the receiving prop, MVP, I don't like like you said, I don't like the catches. I think he can do a lot more with a lot less. His run after catch, it's the middle of the field. If you get the ball in the middle of the field, you got a middle linebacker to beat and a safety to beat, and you're running. I think there's also that slot fade that they run him on.
Yeah.
There are a lot of play designs that I just see him running after the catch. So I would stay away from the receptions, but the yards I think he's going to hit easily. I think Freshie even said he'll have that by halftime. So there we go. So Cup over, that's a lock. So I'm calling it a lock.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, again, like I think actually one of the more interesting dynamics of this game are, the Taylor and McVay relationship,
Yeah.
obviously coaching on each other and like how familiar they'll be. I mean, we talk about some of these narratives and obviously for the Super Bowl, narratives get blown up because we have 2 weeks just in anticipation of the Super Bowl. So obviously we're going to talk about everything. Like literally everything that you can talk about is going to get talked about. But so it does kind of feel like, okay, at this point in the year, especially now that McVay's been head coach for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, and then Taylor's been the head coach for 2 years now. These guys have so much tape on all these guys to where they're probably just going to be prepared enough anyway. But it does feel like this is a scenario where Zach Taylor, probably a lot of stuff that he knows, he learned from McVay. So seeing and thinking that maybe there's any way that he can counter it. Now, I think that the Rams are simply too good for stuff like that to matter a whole lot. But that is an interesting thing. But even so, even if you think that there's a chance that the under hits, like even if my projection was under the line for Cooper Kupp, you just don't want to do it. It's just you're just not going to have any fun. You're going to be sitting there.
It's still about execution.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Like you have to anticipate Taylor knowing what McVay's going to do, and McVay's going to have to say, well, if he knows this is coming, we can get him with this. So and that's why football is a chess match, because you get that. Well, he's going to anticipate me doing this out of this call, and then we hit him with one more thing, and then that's going to take the top off the defense. So.
Yep, very true. Well, let's head over to Jamar Chase, obviously another big name wide receiver here that we've heard a ton about this season, and he's obviously had a fantastic year in terms of his DraftKings price. He's 10-4 on the Showdown slate, fourth most expensive player, and now we've covered all of the players over 10K on the Showdown slate. 10-4. I mean, when you're looking at the guys up top here, you have Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. It does sort of feel like Jamar Chase could be the lowest owned captain option amongst those guys, just because, again, Stafford and Burrow are quarterbacks. They're probably going to have that fair share, and obviously Cooper Kupp. So it'll be interesting to see where Alex's ownership projections come in. But for Jamar Chase, I mean, earlier on when the show first started, Debro came in here and he said he's looking forward to the Stafford love and the Chase infatuation. I mean, this is a great spot because you got Quan for the Stafford love. You got me for the Jamar Chase infatuation. I mean, I've been betting this guy's over often and been playing him in DFS often all year long. Obviously, in my season-long leagues, tried to draft him everywhere. I have him for 9.4 targets, 6.2 receptions, just over 93 reception yards in terms of the projected stats that you can see on the screen now. And when looking at his props, I would be inclined to take the over on all of them, especially the yards. And I know the receptions, the projection doesn't stick out a ton. One thing to know about the receiving projections, it's going to be tough to see like a massive edge in that. Obviously, in my opinion, if I had Jamar Chase for like 3 targets more or less than where Vegas is at, I would probably want to rethink my projection because it's probably going to be some kind of mistake, right? Or some kind of wacky margin there. So the receiving yards is kind of where we're going to see a bit more of a larger margin. 77.5 is where you see Jamar Chase on Prize Picks, 79 on DraftKings. This is numbers where he didn't hit it over last week. He only had 54 receiving yards against the Chiefs, but this is a number that we all know he can go massively over. He's now had 2 games over 200 yards on the year, and in the playoffs, he's gone over 109 yards twice out of his 3 games in the playoffs. So I like Jamar Chase overs here. Again, we'll wrap around and talk about Prize Picks again at the end. But Jamar Chase is definitely going to be featured in those bets. So yeah, I like Chase a ton here. I think that he has, if the Bengals win, him and Joe Burrow are instant. Like there's no one else getting the MVP. If the Bengals win, it's one of those 2 guys. Like you had to see a very strange game from somebody like Joe Mixon, like 3 touchdowns, or like even if Joe Mixon scores twice, I don't know if he gets the MVP. And we were talking about this on Friday where we were talking about the James White game. That game was actually replaying on NFL Network yesterday, and he scored 3 times, including the game-tying touchdown and the game-tying 2-point conversion, I believe. And then he scored in overtime to win the game, and he still didn't get MVP. And Tom Brady even said, I'm giving this
Card
card
to
to
James
James
White.
White because he deserves the MVP. That's the kind of thing that I could see happening here. There's just, and I know it shouldn't matter, but there's so much steam behind Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase right now to where if the Bengals win, one of those two guys are winning MVP, no doubt in my mind. So we'll talk about the specialty bets later on, but Jamar Chase MVP is definitely going to be one that we discuss. What are your thoughts on Jamar Chase this one?
You summed it up perfectly. It's going to be Burrow to Chase in some capacity for the Bengals to have a chance. I think the only X factor is how much Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase do we see, and it's always a Jalen Ramsey decision. It's never really a scheme where they have him follow the top receiver because, in the Buccaneers game, he was still playing corner, he was playing the slot, and he was playing the other corner. So they moved Jalen Ramsey around a lot, and it's only when he takes it upon himself to take that challenge. So I think if Chase gets going early, we're going to see Ramsey on him. But at that point, I'm thinking a big play has already happened. So I like everything you have to say about Chase. I think Chase is going to be the quintessential factor of the Bengals being in the game.
Yeah, I agree. And I know Jalen Ramsey's a fantastic corner, but we saw him get burned by Mike Evans in, I think it was week 2 or the second game of the playoffs. I believe it was. And, obviously it's going to be tough for Chase, but he's so good. I think he can do just fine against Ramsey. And they're going to scheme it up to get Chase the ball. Let's move on over to Odell Beckham Jr. here. He's 8.4 on DraftKings Showdown slate in the utility spot. Had him at about 14.5 fantasy points. In terms of his projections, 8.5 targets, 5 receptions, 63 receiving yards. He's been honestly a key part of this offense since he's joined the team, but especially in the playoffs. He continues to score touchdowns. He's now scored 6 out of his 11 games for the Rams here. Last week, 9 catches on 11 targets for a season high, 113 receiving yards. And that is what you expect out of Odell. You expect those big games where he has 8, 9, 10 catches, over 100 yards. That's what you expect, and that's what we saw from him in New York, and that's what we know his upside is. And we definitely know that now that we saw it last week, they can have big games together. And we mentioned it. They only scored 20 points, and they had both Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. have monster games, as well as have 2 running backs with 10-plus carries. Like, there's plenty of room for all of these guys to succeed here. And honestly, that's kind of why I think that you're going to see a lot of my projections lean towards the over, because both these offenses are just very, very efficient, and they get it done. And they're not really spreading the ball out a ton. Like, sure, you have guys like Van Jefferson getting some work, and obviously, Kendall Bland's going to get some work and all that stuff. But, you're not going to see, 7, 8, 9 guys rack up targets. That's just not going to be the scenario for really either team. So, I like the overs on Odell here again. I feel a little bit, more hesitant on Odell because his lines have shot up, based on earlier on in the playoffs compared to now, about 20 yards in terms of difference here for Odell Beckham. But again, the place I like to bet here is the receptions. I know, again, my projections are at 5.1, and on Prize Picks he's at 5. On DraftKings he's at 5 as well. But again, this is a spot where I'm willing to go away from the projection here and kind of take a more of a stand here. But 8 targets in back-to-back games, 6 catches in back-to-back games, 6 or more, and he had 9 last week. So again, I think he's going to be heavily involved in the offense. I also like his anytime touchdown scoring prop, which we don't have a graphic on, but I believe he's at plus 110, and our FTN Bets account tweeted that out. So shout out to those guys over there for working hard on the social media side. So I like his anytime touchdown scoring bet. I like his first-time touchdown scoring bet as well. Again, they're going to continue to use him. They've done it ever since they got him. They made it a point to use him in the red zone and use him in, like you mentioned, one-on-one situations. And a lot of times those have come down by the goal line. We've now seen 3 touchdowns for him on those little fade routes, which I've mentioned on the show a couple times now. That's not really a route that it's like super common anymore. Teams have really gone away from it because it's not like that successful. And they've shown a lot of trust in Odell to do that. And they throw it up to him. They let him work. Even in that game against, I believe it was Baltimore, where they scored to tie the game up at the end of the game. It wasn't Cooper Kupp. Obviously, it's going to be Cooper Kupp a lot of the times, but the fact that they needed to score a touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game or whatever it was, and they go to Odell, I think is a a big thing there. So Odell's a guy that I'm going to be keeping my eye on a ton. And like I mentioned, I like his receptions. I like some of his touchdown scoring props. And I don't even hate his MVP prop. I think it's going to be a lot tougher for him to win if the Rams win, because obviously you have Stafford there, you have Aaron Donald there, all that stuff. And obviously Cooper Kupp. But I think if we do see a massive Odell Beckham game where he goes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, maybe the Bengals just try their best to scheme Cooper Kupp out of the game and Odell just flourishes. I think there's a world there. I think he's at like plus 2,800 or something like that. So it's a big number, but I don't hate it. Not something I'm going to sprinkle a full unit on or anything like that, but don't mind taking a smaller shot on that.
Freshy's calling a lock.
Wow.
And it's close to the line that you said. Yeah, man, I think Odell is you saw early when they traded for him, Stafford was trying to force it to him.
Yeah.
And now that I think that they have their chemistry, they know each other, he's going to be the, I guess, safety net.
Yeah.
One-on-one, anytime they get a one-on-one situation and he looks to Kupp, his second read is probably going to be to Odell, and Odell's going to make the play. There was a curl route in the 49ers game where it should have been tipped and it should have been intercepted, but Odell went up. There was a swipe at the ball. He still strong hand caught it, and that's the kind of guy that they need to offset Cooper Kupp. I think they have fantastic chemistry now, and man, I'm not afraid to say that a big Odell game is probably going to happen just because they're going to be so focused on Cooper Kupp and stopping him. But Cooper Kupp's still going to get his. I think there's an opportunity. You get maybe 2 touchdowns for Odell, 180, 200 yards, and a couple of interception type night from Stafford, and he potentially could win the MVP. But I really like the receiving prop. I think he's going to get a lot more looks because of how they play Cooper Kupp. And I think the receiving yards prop is probably going to be a good play too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm looking forward to seeing both Jamar Chase and Odell in Super Bowl. I mean, this is going to be two of my favorite receivers in the league right now, and obviously Odell's been my favorite for a very long time now. So I'm pumped to see these guys playing a Super Bowl. And obviously Matthew Stafford, former Detroit Lion. Javi says, is Stafford going to dedicate this Super Bowl win to Detroit? Highly doubt it.
I'll probably throw a mention in there, but I don't think it's going to be dedicated now.
Yeah.
This is the closest we're going to get.
Yeah. We saw obviously a lot of when the Rams won the game last week, saw a ton of memes here in Michigan about it. And, everyone was talking about Stafford, and this one girl posted this thing on Facebook and it went viral. She's like, "Oh wow, Stafford in the Super Bowl and Eminem performing at halftime. Yeah. This is the closest Detroit will ever get to the Super Bowl." So
closest we're gonna get.
Pretty true, honestly. But hey, let's head over to the last player profile that we're going to talk about today. It's T. Higgins. He is priced at 7.6 on DraftKings. He is one of my favorite plays of the day on a lot of fronts, on the props, on the DraftKings plays. He's a guy that I'm going to be looking at a ton. 8.9 targets, 5.8 receptions, 77.9 receiving yards. And his props are under 70 on both sites for the receiving yards prop. On DraftKings, 68.5, 65.5 over on Prize Picks. And his receptions, 5 on Prize Picks, 5.5 on DraftKings. I like the over on his receptions a ton. I mean, potentially no CJ Uzoma. And not that they're intentionally scheming Tyler Boyd out. I just think that they're intentionally increasing how often they're trying to get the ball to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So that's going to be something that, it seems like every time Burrow drops back, it's T. Higgins or it's Jamar Chase. Like, these guys are both racking up 9-10 targets a game right now. So over the last 2 games, T. Higgins has had 9+ in both games. The game against Vegas, he was pretty absent. Only had 4 targets in that game. That was kind of just a boring game, and I'm not counting on that kind of game script again here. The last 2 games have been very impressive there for T. Higgins, though. So I like the over on T. Higgins receiving yards, and I like his anytime scorer bet as well, which we will talk about when we circle back on some of those bets. But the projections look good for Jamar Chase, 16.2 over on DraftKings. And like I mentioned, he's 7.6K on DK, and then the utility spot, or the flex spot, I should say, on the showdown slate. I like him a ton. on the showdown slate as well. Like I like Odell, but T. Higgins being $800 cheaper than Odell, I think is a slam dunk play. I like him a ton. I like both those guys, but T. Higgins is a guy that I'll be playing a ton of in the showdown slate and betting a ton. But what are your thoughts on T here?
I think he's going to be he's going to move the chains. He's going to do a lot of the dirty work, and we'll see either Chase go for big plays or finish off drives. I think T. Higgins running the ball or running routes underneath, and then trying to help move the chain. Like I said, a lot of dirty work, a lot of the stuff underneath and middle of the field, trying to figure out how to get Chase open. So I think, once again, this is another safety net, a two receiver with Uzoma being out, like you said, and I don't see much of Tyler Boyd in play. I think this is a good change of pace receiver for the Bengals.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned the Tyler Boyd thing there at the end. Looking at where his props are now compared to his last 4 games, he's been under on his prop over the last 4 games. I believe it's like 36.5 or something like that, 37.5. And again, it's nothing against Tyler Boyd. Like I think that if they need him, they can rely on him. He's a sure-handed receiver. It's just that when you have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase on your team. That's where you want to get the ball. Like it's just they're so good. So that's just kind of how, in my opinion, their offense has been shaping out. And let's pull up the Prize Picks plays now. We've covered all the player profiles, and looking at the Prize Picks plays, as you guys know, it's overs only here, as it always is. But one thing I want to key in on is the correlation here, the correlation between Burrow, Chase, and T. Higgins. And I mentioned I was staying away from Cam Akers and, probably going potentially Cam Akers or maybe even Sony Michel could correlate a bit better here with these 3 Bengals pass catchers and obviously passing game options. But for me, if I'm targeting the over on Burrow and this number hits the way I think it's going to, like I mentioned, I have him for, around 300 passing yards. It's going to be very likely that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins also get there as well. So like I mentioned, guys, when you're thinking of these parlays and same game parlays and all that stuff, and in the Super Bowl, everyone's going to want to bet those parlays. Those are the fun bets to make, right? When doing them, do them in a smart way. Correlate these picks. If you have Joe Burrow over on the passing yards, obviously guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are going to have increased probabilities of hitting their overs as well, because if their quarterback is going over on his passing yards, those passing yards got to go to somebody, right? So Chase and T. Higgins benefit from that in a big way. And then Stafford 272.5. Again, I think that this number is just a bit too low. I will say, though, if the game does go very bad for the Bengals, then Stafford's probably not getting there. But if you think about it, and if Burrow's thrown for over 270 and both of these guys are going for over on their receiving yards, the Rams are likely going to need to do something to move the ball, and Stafford, I think, could do that very easily here. 272, not a massive number that he needs to go over on. So those are the Prize Pick plays of the day. T. Higgins over 65.5 receiving yards. Jamar Chase over 77.5 receiving yards. Joe Burrow over on his passing yards, 265.5. And Mr. Matthew Stafford over 272.5 passing yards. And again, shout out to Quan for the graphics. He absolutely killed them all. But any thoughts on the Prize Picks plays there, Quan?
4X pays how much?
Okay, so if you can add a 5th play to this if you wanted to, but and that's kind of what I do prefer to do. And if you add a 5th play to it, which I didn't put it in yet, but stay tuned in the pick tracker, and I will include another one there so you guys can make it a 5-pick play there. But if you include a 5th one and you go 5 for 5, you get 10x your entry. If you get 4 out of 5, you get double your money, and if you get 3 out of 5, you get 40% of your money back. So I say it every time. If you get 3.5 correct at a sports book, they're going to laugh at you and take your money. Prize Picks will give you 40% back. So if you do a $100 bet, you get $40 back, whatever you wanted to do there. And right now, they actually have a pretty cool promo. So hopefully you guys saw this yesterday. But if you did an entry on the Pro Bowl, you're actually now in the running for 7 straight days leading up to the Super Bowl. You can actually earn a $5,000 entry. You have to complete all their missions, all the accomplishments or whatever. And today it is you have to get an NBA pick correct. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go make like 3, 4, 5 NBA picks, and hopefully one of them wins. You have to get a full winner. No partial winners are going to account for this current challenge or this current goal. So keep in mind, you can go in and try to compete in that 7-day challenge. If you get all 7 days, going up to $5,000 entry for the Super Bowl. So something that I'm definitely be trying to do, but that's how Prize Picks is shaking out. If you wanted to do just 4 picks here. Let me see. I just want to make sure I get this right, because typically when I do it, I do 5. But you can do a 4-pick flex play. If you get 4 out of 4 correct, you'll get 5 times your money. If you get 3 out of 4 correct, you'll get 1.5 times your money. Or you can just absolutely, big brain it all, go 4 for 4, do a power play, which if you don't get 4 out of 4 correct, you get no money back. But if you do get 4 out of 4, you get 10x. So you can do either the flex play, where you can give yourself a little leeway if you get one wrong, or you can do the power play and kind of rely on getting all of those correct. But that is how the prize picks stuff is breaking down now. But let's head over to the specialty plays, because I'm not going to lie, Quan, I am very happy about these plays. I'm excited to talk about them. It was 6 on the board right now. So first pick, T. Higgins anytime touchdown, plus 175 on DK. Seems a bit low for T. Higgins here in terms of these odds. I like him a lot. I mentioned it. Going to be having a ton of exposure to him in the showdown market, in the props market, all that stuff on prize picks. And I like him for anytime touchdown as well, plus 175. Quan, do you agree with me there? Is T. Higgins going to find the end zone? Please say yes.
I think T. Higgins finds the end zone. Yes.
Love it. Thank you for the words of affirmation there. Next one, Jamar Chase, MVP plus 1,800. I touched on this. When looking at the MVP, pool here in terms of where DraftKings is playing these guys at, Jamar Chase is like the 5th most, highest odds. So it goes Stafford, Joe Burrow, no surprise there, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and then Jamar Chase. So, Jamar Chase being 5th here is, in my opinion, there's just value. Like if the Bengals win, you're automatically taking 3 guys out of the running, right? Stafford, Kupp, Donald. They're not winning the MVP if they lose. So now you're saying you could potentially get Jamar Chase, who would then probably be the 2nd most likely player to win MVP behind Joe Burrow if they win. But so it's just more so just like I'm kind of game theorying the MVP board here, where if the Bengals win, that's the only chance Jamar Chase has of winning MVP, right? The Bengals need to win. And if they do that, 3 out of the 5 guys in front of them are getting wiped off of the MVP board. So that's the main reason behind Jamar Chase, and the fact that I think he can just have an absolutely nuclear game. Like if he goes for one of the Kansas City game where he had 266 yards, or the Ravens game where he had over 200 yards, like he's going to win MVP if he does that. Like that's just how it's going to be. But next one, jersey number of first touchdown score under 23.5. This is my favorite bet of the week. I know it's minus 140, but it's my favorite bet. Okay. And I know it's a little counterintuitive because I'm betting on a T. Higgins touchdown, which would obviously not be good. But T. Higgins and Joe Mixon, those are like the only guys with the jersey number over 23.5.
Yeah.
So you have Cam Akers, who's 23. You have, I guess, Sony Michel could also score. He's 25. But you have Cooper Kupp, who's 10. Odell, who's 3. Jamar Chase, who's 1. Both quarterbacks are number 9. So they're, under here as well. And you have the added, not that this is all likely, but you have the added step now that if someone on the defense scores a touchdown, you have a lot of players over there as well who are under 23.5. Jalen Ramsey, he's 5. I believe one of the cornerbacks for Cincinnati is
Eli
under 20.
Apple was 22.
Yeah. So
there's another one is 21 too, or 20, I think. Yeah.
And then I believe Bates, I think Bates is 30, but I think Von Bell's under. So again, like a defensive touchdown is probably not super likely, but when you think a lot of the guys that I like to score here, especially the receivers, Chase, Kupp, even if Van Jefferson scores, he's 12. Odell Beckham, he's 3. Like a lot of guys here. It feels like the only way this doesn't hit is if one of the random tight ends score, or if it's T. Higgins or Joe Mixon, which could happen. But when you look at the, let's go and look at the first touchdown scorer odds. Joe Mixon's at 750, but after that you have Cooper Kupp, Cam Akers, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham. That's the top 5 along with Joe Mixon. So 4 out of the top 5 are under the jersey number there. And then you have if either quarterback rushes it in or whatever. So there's a ton of outs here, and it feels like the only real way that this first touchdown score bet doesn't hit is if Joe Mixon or T. Higgins score the first touchdown. So what you could do is you can bet, you can throw 2 units on jersey number of first touchdown score under 23.5. You can throw 2 units on, like I like throwing 2 units on that, and then throwing a half unit on Joe Mixon or T. Higgins to score first touchdown. And Javi is saying, Kyle, #hedge life. This is absolutely what this is here. Absolutely. But I mean, sure, if you throw 2 units on this bet here, let's say you throw, $100, right? Let's just let me put that in real quick. Let me see if this special is still up, which I'm assuming yes it is. All right, so under 23.5. So let's say you put $200 again. Let's say unit is $100. 200 to win 342. So whatever you want to do, whatever your unit size is, there's no unit shaming here. But 342 is what you can win there.
It's not the size of the unit; it's what you do with
it. Exactly. So 342 and 342 is what you can win, right? Which that's a good payday. I'll take that all day long. Now let's say we go and put in Joe Mixon and T Higgins. Let's say we throw $50 on Joe Mixon first touchdown score, $50 on a T Higgins touchdown score. $50 would win you $650 for T Higgins. $50 on Mixon would win $425. And again, you can also shop those odds around, try to find the best possible first touchdown score odds for Mixon and T Higgins across the industry as well, right? Which you can use the prop shop at FTN Bets to do so. So that is what I'm doing. I'll be betting the under on jersey number under 23.5 to be the first touchdown score of the game. I'll be throwing 2 units on it. And then I'll be throwing smaller units, probably half units, on Mixon and T Higgins to score the first touchdown. Because again, I think that's probably the only likely ways that that bet doesn't hit. So that's what I'll be doing. Any thoughts on that?
No, it's a great play.
I schemed it up, man. I was in the lab. I schemed it up.
Thinking about it. I see.
But all right, let's move on to the next one here. And okay, this one's fun. I don't feel as strongly about it. This is more so an entertainment bet. Which if you don't like, then why are you watching the Super Bowl? Like that's half the fun, right? You have to throw at least a couple of these specialty picks as pure fun. Total players to have a pass attempt over 2.5. And I want to throw 2 names out there. 1, Odell Beckham Jr. He's already done it in the playoffs. He threw a pass. Number 2, Johnny Hekker. Like we've seen it from the punter a couple of times from the Rams. I mean, it seems like every year these guys are doing this regularly, right? Mm-hmm. So now I wouldn't be surprised if the special teams unit once again do it here for the Rams. So I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Anything?
Last game of the year, Kyle can't hold anything back now.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, how many times are we going to see the Philly special type things pulled out? We saw Tom Brady drop a pass in the Super Bowl a couple years back. Obviously, we saw Nick Foles catch a touchdown pass. I feel like we can see some. I didn't go into full detail and looking like, did Kendall Blanton have any quarterback experience or anything? I thought Odell, and I thought special teams for the Rams, they like to do some fakes. So that is my my play, my lean on that play there.
I like it. There has to be a trick play involved in some capacity. So it's either going to come from the team that's down that needs to get back in the game, or a team that's probably ahead. Maybe we see a Stafford reception for a touchdown. Maybe we see Cooper Kupp throw it to Odell. Like you said, it's been there. They probably won't be prepared for it, but there'll be something there. And the Rams, they got scored on with Debo through a passing touchdown a few weeks ago. So I mean, that could be in play for the Bengals as well.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the line's at 2.5. So just one other guy throws a touchdown there, and that bet cash is there. So that is what I'm banking on as of right now. And like I mentioned, the main reason for it is Odell. We've seen him throw passes quite often throughout his career, honestly, but he even did it as a Ram already once. And then the fake punt option there for the Rams, so we've seen do that honestly very frequently. All right, next pick here, and this is going back to mine and Quan's kind of talk about how both teams have struggled to finish drives, right? And in the Super Bowl, maybe some jitters. I mean, I'm not a guy that's going to bank on that, but the finishing drives thing is a very real thing. And both teams to score 2+ field goals at plus 250, I think is pretty interesting. And again, if both kickers hit 2 field goals, this cashes. 2+ means you just need 2. So McPherson's doing it for sure.
I think that's a layup, yeah.
Yeah, McPherson's getting there, no problem. I mean, this guy is just. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals are like, what, it's first down, go out there and kick it, McPherson. Kidding, but that's how confident they are in this guy. Whenever he has a chance, he's going to do it, and they're not missing. Hopefully, I might have just knock on wood. But anyway, I like McPherson a lot in this game, and 2+ just doesn't feel like a lot. I guess maybe because it's from both teams that we're saying. The plus 150 or plus 250. But hey, at plus 250, both teams have scored 2+ field goals. I like it. I like it a lot, especially for two teams that have sort of struggled to finish drives here.
Finishing drives and conservativeness. I think those are both the plays right there. I like it.
Yep. And just real quick, I meant to pull this up earlier, but over the last 3 games, Matt Gay has had 2+ field goals. So in the 3 playoff games, he's had 2+ field goals in each of those 3 games. And during the regular season, he had 2+ field goals in every single game except for 3 throughout the regular season. Where he against 4. 4 is the actual number. 1 game he didn't even kick a field goal, so he might not even been out there. Who knows? He might have just take the day off. But Matt Gay, 2+ field goals in every single game in the regular season except for 4, and 2+ field goals in each playoff game so far this season. So that is a number that I like a lot. That actually might be also one of my favorite picks. And then McPherson, we know what he's done. He has had 4+ field goals. He's had 4 field goals in each game in the playoffs so far this season. So this is plus 250. I think DraftKings fell asleep.
Yeah, it might be easy money.
Yeah, they fell asleep at the wheel. But George says the Gatorade is actually beer, minus 6,000. Or that's 60,000. Wow. Hey, I hear George is was it Miller guy? Is that what you are, George? Miller, or is it Michelob? I don't know. Something with an M, I believe. Maybe that's what's going to be in the Gatorade this week. But I think there's one more specialty prop here. And you can find a lot of these matchup plays over on DraftKings, but this one is T. Higgins versus OBJ, minus 125. I'm a little worried about it because I do like OBJ, but I just feel like T. Higgins is going to be more consistently involved. I feel like he's going to have more consistent in terms of how often they're going to need him. They have Joe Mixon there, they have Jamar Chase, and I guess if CJ Uzoma is out, then that's going to only help T. Higgins there. But T. Higgins versus Odell, as you guys can see, the projection I had T. Higgins for 77, and I had Odell for just over 63, I believe it was, either 62 or 63. So I have a pretty significant margin here in favor of T. Higgins. So, he's a guy that I'll be taking in the matchup over OBJ. And trust me, guys, it pains me because I'm a huge Odell fan. I like him a lot this week, but I'm taking T. Higgins in that receiving yards matchup. Those are the specialty props, and I'm a big fan of those. So those will all be in the bet tracker as well. And as Sam alluded to earlier, the prize picks plays and the challenges are posted over on FTN Daily. So go check those out as well.
I love it, man. This is a great show. Want to thank everybody for coming, but the moment that everybody's basically been waiting for, I finally get my bet paid. Listen, yes. I was stressed out during the 49ers and Rams game. I had a bet with Freshie to dance. I had a bet to lose my hair, and I came through on both of them. Yep. So this morning, before we went on air, I received a video. It was exactly what I was expecting. It was funny, and it was I'm gonna remove myself and Kyle from the show, and we're gonna play our video. So, Freshie, thanks for being the man of your word. Let's get to it.
I don't know, man. I don't think it's right. I think they cheated. I don't know how they won. Coming back like that from halftime. It's not like we've seen that before. Now I gotta do the song. I gotta do this dance for Quan. I don't know, man. I just can't. I can't do it. Please believe in me and the rest of my heathens. Check the guy that locked at the top of the Four Seasons. I ain't got no friends, man. Penthouse rooftop birds I'm feeding. No deceiving, nothing up in my sleeving. No teasing. I'm good. I need you to get up off of that dance floor. Give that man what he's asking for. Because I feel like busting loose and I feel like touching you. Oh. And can't nobody stop the juice. So baby, tell me what's the you? The Rams just get a ruin my season, my year already, man. We're only in February. Oh. And I'm a Kings fan.
Thank you, Freshie, for sending me that. For all of you who need the visual references, we got the dancing TikTok kid who was crying in his mom's kitchen because he wanted to dance in school. We got Tina Belcher towards the end, and my favorite part is him reading the lyrics because Nelly Hot in Here it's a pretty complicated song, but I was perusing the internet and I Googled, I said, what's Matthew Stafford's favorite song? And this video of him and Kelly, his wife, came up and he was singing Hot in Here. So I put one and one together and we got a video from Freshie. So thank you for submitting that. Make sure you follow us on TikTok because I will throw some edits on there with the music underneath. We're gonna get this thing going. Kyle, give an honest review of the performance. I think it was up there with the Weeknd's performance last year.
Oh, way better. I mean, man, the little, my favorite was a little twerk, like where
the Tina Belcher.
Oh man, that was too good. And then him like crying, doing the dance. Yeah, that was. I love the comedic aspect and all the great touches. So honestly, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. You are going to Hollywood, Freshie. You got your ticket. This is the Optimal Idol. We'll see who's next on another episode. We get another bet.
Yeah, who wants to do the next one? Just let us know. Obviously, you have to lose the bet. You have to go out and lose it. Otherwise, we don't want that. I'm not doing any dance. I can't do any dances like that. So if anyone wants to dance for us, we don't need to do a bet. You can just send us a clip. That's fine too. But we do appreciate you all for tuning in. Sorry for the length of the show, but obviously got to cover a lot for this big Super Bowl preview. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Shout out to George, shout out to Quan for all the hard work on the graphics and making this show possible. And then obviously shout out to ex-Freshie, Mr. Sean Evans. Go follow him on Twitter. I'm sure you will see him on TikTok here very shortly. Shout out to him for that dance. Appreciate it all. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.